I have been to 41 states and 11 countries. I taught children where rivers go. I wrote about roads for 30 years. And the one thing I never thought to look at, the one map I never unfolded, was myself. I found out on a Tuesday. My daughter had done one of those DNA tests, the kind they sell at the drugstore now, like Ancestry is something you can order alongside cold medicine. She called me on a Tuesday evening in April 2018, and she said, "Daddy, something came back strange." I told her computers make mistakes. She said, "Daddy, it's not the computer." I was 81 years old. I had buried both my parents. I had outlived a wife. I had grandchildren who called me Pop and meant it. And none of it, not one day of it, had been built on the foundation I believed it was. Let me tell you about the foundation first, because that's the only way the rest of this makes sense.
I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, in a neighborhood called Shiloh, up near the North Slope. My father, Eugene Pruitt, drove a bus for the city. My mother, Clara, took in alterations and made the best sweet potato pie in 3 counties, a fact that was not disputed by anyone with functioning taste. We were not wealthy. We were stable, which in Asheville in the 1940s for a black family was its own form of achievement. We were church-going. We were respectable. We were above all things, a unit. The 3 of us against whatever the world decided to be on any given day. My father gave me a road map when I turned 16, a folded ESO map of North Carolina, the kind they used to give out free at gas stations. He pressed it into my hands the morning I got my driver's license, and he said, "Every road on here is yours, Walt. Remember that." I thought he meant it the way fathers mean things at important moments, generally poetically, with more feeling than precision. I folded the map and put it in my jacket pocket and thought about where I was going to drive first. I kept that map for 65 years. It traveled with me to every state, every country, every classroom. It lived in the bottom of a suitcase, then a desk drawer, then a box of things I called important without examining why. I went to college in 1956 at Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte on an academic scholarship. I studied geography because I wanted a reason to justify wanting to go everywhere. I taught for 28 years at a high school back in Asheville. I married Denise in 1965. We had 2 daughters. I started writing for regional travel magazines when I was 52. Small pieces at first, then longer ones, then a column that ran for 11 years called Side Roads that maybe 14,000 people read, and that I am unreasonably proud of. I was, in other words, a man who knew where he was. That was the whole project of my life, knowing where I was. My mother, Clara, died in 1989. My father, Eugene, followed in 1994. I cleaned out their house on Merriman Avenue myself. I found the usual things: photographs, church programs, the deed to the house, my father's Army discharge papers. I found a small wooden box in the back of the bedroom closet that had a lock on it, and the key was on my father's key ring, and I opened it and found 2 savings bonds, a life insurance policy, a receipt from a furniture store from 1952, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. I put the envelope in the box of important things and moved on. I am telling you this so you understand who I am. I found a sealed letter addressed to me from my dead father, and I put it in a box and did not open it for 24 years because I was afraid of what letters from dead fathers in locked boxes contain. I taught geography. I know about terrain. I know when something is going to require more of you than you currently have. In 2018, my daughter Renee did the DNA test. The results showed no biological connection to anyone named Pruitt. They showed a strong connection to a family cluster in Philadelphia she had never heard of. They showed that my father was not my father, and my mother was not my mother, biologically speaking, which is a sentence I have now had 7 years to look at, and it still reads like a misprint. I went to the box. I found the envelope. I opened it. My father, Eugene, my father, and I am not putting qualifiers on that word, had written me 4 pages in the careful handwriting of a man who had not written much, but had thought very carefully about what he wanted to say. He and Clara had not been able to have children.
In 1937, they had arranged through a church connection in Philadelphia to adopt a newborn infant whose mother was a young woman who could not keep him. Everything had been handled privately, the way things were handled then. There had been paperwork, but not the kind that left easy trails.
He wrote, "We never told you because we could not figure out the right moment, and then there were too many wrong ones. And then we decided that what you were was ours, completely, and the rest was just geography." Geography. My father used that word. I laughed. I laughed alone in my living room at 81 years old for a long time, and then I stopped laughing. I found the road map that night, dug it out of the important box, unfolded it for the first time in decades, and there it was in the crease, in his handwriting, what he had said to me at 16. "You were always ours, Walt. Every road on here is yours." He knew at 16 that I might someday find out. He had put the answer inside the gift, and I had carried it for 65 years without reading it. I hired a researcher in 2019. My biological mother's name was Estelle. She had been 19 in 1937, unmarried, living in a boarding house in North Philadelphia. She died in 1971. She had 2 other children, both deceased now. I have a biological half-nephew in Wilmington, Delaware. We have exchanged 3 letters. He is a perfectly kind man and a stranger to me in every way that has ever mattered. I am not angry. I want to say that clearly because people expect anger and I understand why. But anger requires believing that something was taken from you. And when I look at my life, at Asheville, at Shiloh, at my father's hands on the steering wheel of a city bus, at my mother's kitchen, at every road I drove and wrote about, at my daughters, at my grandchildren, I cannot locate the theft. What I can locate is this: a man who spent 80 years teaching children that identity is geography, that you are where you come from, and who learned at 81 that he had been teaching a much better lesson than he knew. Where you come from is only one road. It is not the whole map. My father knew that. He tried to tell me at 16. I just wasn't ready to read it yet.